review of all of the gear that I used on the CDT. Now, much of the gear that I started with, I'd actually used on previous through hikes, either one of them or two of them. I actually had to replace a bit of gear on this hike because it turns out you can't expect gear to last on a third through hike sometimes. But let me go through all of my gear and tell you what worked for me, what I didn't love as much. So let's start on the outside of my pack. First of all, in this big mesh pocket at the front, I would often put in lots of stuff, as much stuff as I could squeeze in at times. But the main things that it carried was my Tyvek that I used as a ground sheet to protect the floor of my tent. You don't always need a ground sheet. I just like the fact that I know my expensive tents will last a tiny bit longer because I've been protecting them. And this also doubled as a sit pad. I would just pull it out at breaks and sit on it, which was super great. And then in New Mexico, I also wrote on it, and that was really helpful when hitching. In this front pocket, I had my rain jacket, which is a Marmot rain jacket. I had a lighter weight one, I think by Outdoor Research, but I chose to take this one instead, and I'm glad that I did because it was wet and windy enough and cold enough at times on the CDT that I appreciated having the thicker rain jacket. I also kept my rain pants in this pocket. I did not have rain pants in New Mexico, didn't need them. I started Colorado with a garbage bag or a trash bag, which I used as a rain skirt. But after I got caught in a snowstorm, I was like, let's make wise decisions and not get hypothermia. And in the next town, I went and got these, which are Black Diamond rain pants. They're on the heavier side. If I was going to get rain pants not on a whim in a small town in Colorado, then I probably would have just got Frog Togs offline, because I find that I trash rain pants, and at $20 I feel like that's okay to trash them. Or if I was going for proper rain pants, I probably would have went with Outdoor Research ones. You can get lightweight ones from them, so they'd be worth looking into. However, I did find these to be great, and they're still going, so they're reasonably durable, so that's a win, except just a bit heavier. Then in Colorado, right at the bottom, I kept a hot hand warmer or two. You so do not need these. I just feel the cold, and there was a few times where I pulled them out overnight, and just that little bit of comfort makes you just a little bit warmer. It was great. So they just sat there for the rest of the trip, and I probably used about 4 or 5 of them over the course of the through hike. Then in the side pockets, so in this one I kept my umbrella. I would love to tell you what brand this is. It is a Light Flex Swing, I think, or Wing. It's one of the lightweight hiking umbrellas from a European company. It's so similar to the silver ones that you get, that people use. I just really like having colour, and so it was fun to have a red one, and it was a talking point. I would not hike without this, particularly the CDT. I just love this thing. It was worth its weight in gold. The fact that if it just started to rain or hail a little bit, I could just pull it out, keep myself dry, and then it would stop and I could put it away. And often I didn't need my rain gear because it wasn't that cold or that heavy. And so highly recommend, and also used it in the desert as sun protection. Then in this side pocket as well, I kept my water bottles and bear spray later on. I just got smart water bottles and attached my filter to them. I started off with the Sawyer Micro. That did not hold up to all the gunk of New Mexico, so I went up in size to Sawyer's bigger one. However, I always have problems with Sawyer filters in that the O-ring inside them just fails after a while, and I try to jimmy rig it, but it still just leaks around that opening there when you go to screw it on, which is super annoying, and it happens with every one that I've used. And I really want to support Sawyer because I think they're a fantastic company and the things that they do. But in Wyoming, I swapped to the Platypus, and the flow rate on the Platypus and the fact that it didn't leak around that join where you attach it to the bottle, I think I'm converted to the Platypus, which is really sad because I do like Sawyer. But yeah, Platypus filter for the win. And then as we go around, here I have my water bottle holder, which carried the water bottle that I'd filter into and drink out of. And then on this shoulder strap, I carried my Garmin InReach 2 Mini. Highly recommend having some sort of PLB device. This was great. The one thing about it is that I had it set to tracking every 2 hours to send back to my emergency contact in Australia in case anything ever did go wrong. And I found that over the course of the through hike, it used to last about 5 days before needing to be recharged in the beginning, and it was down to 4 days at the end. So battery life does slowly deplete in them. Well, that's kind of to be expected. Then my phone holder, so phone, which I just had an iPhone 14. Went in there, and then this front mesh pocket here, I put my little tripod, which I'm currently using to film on. And then as we go round, I kept my tent in this pocket. So I went through 2 tents on this trip. I'm going to have a gear review up of both of those in coming weeks, so look out for that. This one is the Z-Packs Duplex Lite, which I really like and swapped to in Colorado just for its ability to dry out better, because there just were so many thunderstorms and condensation on the CDT. But I started with the Gossamer Gear, the one, yeah, which I really liked as well, and I still have that and would still highly recommend that as well. But look out for the review of those two, that's going to come in future weeks. Then down in my hip pockets, in this hip pocket I carried my gloves. They're actually mitts. They're by Montaigne. I really like them because while not waterproof, they are water resistant, so water would bead off them to start. If I was in heavy rain, then it would start to soak in, but I really liked that. And then the inside of them is lined with fleece, which is fantastic for keeping your hands warm, and I'd often find I'd use them in Colorado or early in the mornings. I loved having the gloves. Then in my other hip pocket, I would keep my sunnies. I don't have them at the moment. I started the trail with some generic sunnies, lost them in the basin in Wyoming, so got some gooder ones from REI. Really like them. They sat on my face. I have a small face, and I find that sunnies often will slip off or be too big on my face, but the gooder ones were amazing, stayed put where they're meant to, which is kind of what they're designed for. So highly recommend checking out Gooder's range of sunglasses. Then my pack has a top zip, a small compartment in here. This is where I kept my trowel, and I would use it for toilet paper, Kleenex, tissue paper. I just really like that over normal toilet paper. I think it's just a bit thicker, and so a couple of folds of it and I get a few wipes out of the one piece, which I just thought was good and maybe too much information for a video, but oh well, that is now going online. So I kept that in there, and then I also had in there just a little bag of ibuprofen, so easy access to that if I ever needed to pop any pain medication, which I didn't actually use too many on this trip, which was good. Alright, then we get to the main compartment. On top, I kept my food bag. I went through a food bag on this trip. However, the food bag that I started with, I had used for 2 previous through hikes, so I feel like that's a pretty good innings to make it 2.5 through hikes. Math, really good at it. So the original one was just a Cedar Summit one, 13 litres, and it had the roll top, which you would then roll over and clasp up. I really like that design because it means you could like put a rope through there and hang the bag if you need to. However, when I needed to replace it, the gear store I went to didn't have that design, so I just ended up with a drawstring one. But I think I'll go back to the roll top one when I go to get another bag. These ones are great because they're waterproof, super lightweight, so I really like them. I also had an Ursack, which I got when I started the winds and for the rest of Wyoming and then Idaho and Montana. But I gave that away to a friend because we don't have bears in Australia. Then the next thing in my pack, so I would have a pack liner, which was just a garbage bag, trash bag, and everything else was inside that trash bag. The food bag was on the outside, but everything else on the inside to keep it dry. And so at the top of that, I would often keep my puffy so that I could get easy access to it if I needed it. I really liked this puffy. It has seen me through 3 through hikes now and has kept me reasonably warm. It is the Mountain Hardwear Ghost Whisperer. So it's pretty old now, but I was surprised at just how well it did actually hold up, and yeah, was all that I needed. I thought I might need a mid layer as well, but turned out I didn't, although there is a caveat to that which I will get to. Next up is my electronics bag. So I started out with the Nightcore battery packs, the 10,000 ones. However, both of them died from overheating. One of them wasn't a big issue because it happened in town, so I was able to swap it out to the second one. And I started with 2 because I was doing filming and editing, and I was just concerned that I would run through power and need the extra battery pack. But I actually discovered that the 10,000 one was fine and I could charge up most of the stuff once I got to town. So after the Nightcore one died, I just got a generic another 10,000 one from REI, and this one looks like it is Infinity Lab in brand. Worked just fine. So, but yeah, heavier than the Nightcore one. So at some point I probably will swap out to a lighter one again, but this one's working just fine so far. In here I also carried all of my cables and my wall plug, my headlamp, which is a Petzl one. It's their lightweight one. I had a redundancy of headphones, so I carried corded ones just because I listen to so much music and podcasts on trail and I like to get out of my own head. However, I also had some AirPods and found that they lasted for an entire stretch. I would only use one at a time, which helped the battery life on those continue to go. So this was redundant, but they're so lightweight I kept them there anyway. And the other thing that I had in here was a flip fuel. My friends got me onto this in New Mexico. I was using theirs and it was just super helpful not to have to buy a new gas canister all the time, but to find ones in hiker boxes and refill up. So I feel like this was worth carrying the extra weight for the ability to do that, and ended up getting my own in Colorado once I wasn't hiking with those friends anymore. All right, next up is my toiletry bag. I just kept it in a Ziploc, and in it I kept things like my toothpaste. My toothbrush was just the electric toothbrush tops that are like that big, so I just used one of those. I've thrown that out now because it got gross by the end of the trail. Menstrual cup was kept in there. The back flush top for my platypus filter I kept in there. Some tear aid if I ever needed to patch up my pad. I used it on my bag to patch up some tears, things like that. I also had a few big band-aids, patches, things like that if I ever got a big wound, but they got gross and grotty by the end, so I've thrown them out. A little bit of Leuco tape. I also kept some Leuco tape wrapped around my trekking poles. Had some dental floss, and I also had a needle with my dental floss, not only to floss my teeth but to sew things up, which I did for my pants. My backside had some nice dental floss sewing going on. And then I have this tiny little pocket knife which had knife, scissors, nail file, and then I think it also had tweezers. Really loved that size. Didn't keep that in there, kept that in my pant pocket, but it's there for safekeeping. All right, next up is my extra clothes bag. So this is just an Osprey stuff sack, which is water resistant, just that extra layer to help make sure that the clothes that I need to wear overnight stay dry. In here are my hiking gloves, which I actually wore. They weren't in here. They're the outdoor research hiking gloves. I also kept a buff in here. I reckon I could have got rid of this if I really had wanted to, because I didn't use it that much, but it was useful the few times that I did use it. Okay, now here's the caveat to what I said before about not having a mid layer, is when I got to Colorado and got caught in that snowstorm, I was like, I feel like it might be good to have an extra layer to hike in that can get wet, that's not my puffy, so that my puffy stays inside my pack nice and dry. And so I got this hooded merino top. I'll put the brand down below. I think it's Vrumi. I don't know how to pronounce that, sorry. But it's made out of merino. It's not quite mid-layer thickness. I would often just use it as a normal hiking top, as a sun hoodie, instead of my pink hiking shirt that I would often wear. But sometimes I would double up if I did need the extra warmth. But I actually found, usually after the first hour or two of hiking in the mornings, that this one could come off and just my pink one could stay on. But because I feel the cold, I really liked the extra security of having this, and so I used it for the rest of the trail. Then the stuff that I wore in the evenings, I just had a thin, lightweight icebreaker, merino icebreaker, 175 in thickness, which is not super thick, it's pretty lightweight. So I'd wear that to bed at night. Again, people don't often change out of their hiking gear to sleep. I just liked having merino to sleep in, again, because I feel the cold, and merino is really good at keeping you warm. And I also had merino leggings, which I don't have here with me, that I would wear to bed at night. These are my gaiters. I got Dirty Girl ones. I originally had Ultra ones, but I lost one of them, so swapped to Dirty Girl. They have ended up with holes in them, so I'm not sure about the durability of them, but I really like wearing gaiters. Then I had a pair of darn tufts to wear at night. So these were the slightly longer ones. Again, keep my tootsies nice and warm at night. And then I had my hiking pair as well that I would wear. And then finally, which was not kept in here, this was kept to the outside of my pack, is my pea rag, which is a cooler cloth. Really like using these. As for the clothes that I wore, I had my pink hiking shirt. I'll put the brand down below. Had just hiking shorts. Again, I'll put the brand down below. They did have the zip off legs, but I never used the legs. What I would often do for both the sun protection, because I don't like wearing pants, is use the compression socks. I didn't use them for all of the trail, but partly it was sun protection, sometimes it was for warmth in Colorado, but I just prefer wearing compression socks over wearing pants. But there was also times where I wasn't wearing them as well. Had darn tufts for my socks and went through variations of shoes. Started with Ultra Lone Peaks. That model was actually really great. Then swapped to their newer Olympus. 2 of those pairs, one was trashed within a month, one pair was trashed within 2 weeks. Was not impressed, and so then I switched to Topo Traverses, and that pair lasted me for 800 miles, and then the last pair I had, I finished the trail with and can still use them. They're in okay shape. Then I also had in here my fuel canister. I had the 250 gram one, but couldn't fly with that, so I no longer have that. Then my cook pot. So I made a cozy for it, which is just out of that reflective bubble material here in Australia. We use it to put up in our window shields of our cars to reflect the sun. But I was explaining that to someone else overseas and they were like, what the heck are you talking about? And I'm like, don't you get sunlight? But that's the material that I used, and there was just a YouTube video online that taught me how to do it. So that's what I used. This pot is a Mac Pack pot, which is a Kiwi brand, and we also have them here in Australia. This is one of the things that has lasted all 3 through hikes, which is amazing. And then inside this pot I kept my little stove top, which is the MSR Whisper, I think that's right. I have a bit of tin foil, aluminium foil, aluminum foil, alfoil, whatever you would like to call it, which I used as a windshield when I cooked. Highly recommend it. Weighs hardly anything, and I use so much less gas than the other people that I was hiking with, and in part I think it's because of this, and in part it's because I would just boil the water in here and then shove it into here to then do what they said as a simmer, and just wait about 10 or so minutes depending on what meal it was, and then it was cooked. And then I had a little Cedar Summit cup as well. Again, you don't need that. However, I really like drinking chai and tea, but it was mostly chai on trail, so I like having my meal in here and then my chai in here. I also forgot to mention that in my food bag is my spoon. This is one thing that has also lasted, I think, 3 through hikes. It's a Cedar Summit spork, and it's also got the knife at this end. I don't really use the knife. I use the knife on my little pocket knife. Then we have my air mattress. So this is Thermarest Neo Air X Therm. I think it is just the regular size. I did not start the trail with this. I started the trail with a Cedar Summit one. It's their lightweight one that has slightly higher R value. I think it was an R value of around 3 or 4, just because I feel the cold. And I also had that in 3/4 length, and then would just throw my bag underneath my feet. Because I'm only 5'6", I never had a problem with that. However, and that had done 2 through hikes and lasted most of New Mexico, and then got a hole or started leaking around the valve. And so when I was at my friend's place in Colorado Springs, he had this spare. So I took this, and it has an R value of 7, I think. So it is heavier than what I had. However, as someone who feels the cold, was never cold again. So highly recommend if you are willing to carry a tiny bit extra weight to go up to this one. Then we have my sleeping bag. I keep it in a Cedar Summit stuff sack. It is the Catabatic Flex, I believe. And I didn't start the trail with it. I started the trail with a Z-Packs sleeping bag, and it was rated to 10 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 12 Celsius. I, however, was getting cold in New Mexico and discovered that perhaps after doing 2 through hikes, it was not as warm as it once was. So I bought a new sleeping bag, and the Catabatic one is their 15 degree one, which I think is around minus 7 degrees Celsius. So not as warm as my Z-Packs. However, I loved it and never felt cold using it. It has the enclosed foot box and then the ability to cinch it down with straps. I never used those straps. I found that I was warm enough and would just kind of tuck it in around me, and sometimes I would do up the neck buttons, but yeah, didn't need to cinch it. However, I'm sure if there were colder environments, I might want to use those straps and have it fully cinched in around me. But part of that is because I also used a sleeping bag liner, which might seem a bit excessive, but I really did notice the difference in temperature using it. When the sleeping bag would kind of open up and a bit of air would get in, I didn't super feel the cold getting in. I just flick it back underneath me, and it's because the air was still trapped around my body because I was using this. And the other reason I really like this is because I like to keep my sleeping bag as clean as possible, just so that it will last for as long as possible, because gear is expensive, and when down gets dirty, it loses its ability to keep warm, and loses its ability for its fluffiness, which traps in the air and the heat. So that's why I use a sleeping bag liner. And the last thing that I had was a little Cedar Summit lightweight air pillow. Again, if someone has great solutions for sleeping systems that are lightweight, I would love to know, because I always feel like I sleep okay on trail, but not super well, and I feel like pillow is part of that issue. But yeah, need to use a pillow. If people have better suggestions for a good pillow, let me know. And the last thing that I used that I don't have with me, because I threw them out because they were absolutely trashed, because they'd done 2.5 through hikes, were my Black Diamond trekking poles. So I need to replace them because I use them to put up both of the tents that I use, and I really liked them, but by the end, both of the poles wasn't pulling out to be able to collapse them, and I had totally worn away the bottom nibs. Like, people would just look at those and laugh and be like, what are you doing? And I'm like, it works fine. So yeah, need to replace those. But I hope that has been helpful as you think about what gear you might use on a through hike and what worked for me. I do have some more specific gear reviews coming up on some of the gear that I did use on this through hike. It had a tiny little toothbrush. Seriously, can't say toothpaste. How hard is toothpaste?